Hey guys, I hope this video finds you well, and I hope everyone's having a pretty good day, pretty good time in the quarantine. I know it's going to be a while. I know it's been a lot, so I wanted to take a few minutes to just explain this next topic. This next topic we're going to be talking about is called succession. I've shared this PowerPoint with you, and I know I shared a video and you have a reading, so it may be familiar to you, but I still wanted to just make sure everyone kind of got it straight from the horse's mouth and understands what succession is. Now, succession is pretty much an environment hitting the reset button. Whether it's resetting over after millions of years of being inactive, or even just after a fire. But what we see is the ecology has to dramatically change, and this is kind of how it starts. So the first type of succession is called primary succession. This happens when there's no soil to begin with. Think a glacier recedes, there's no dirt underneath it, it's just bare rock. Also, a volcano explodes, and that leaves magma all over, and that magma, it's just there's no soil to it, it's just stiff, it's hard, nothing can be done. So succession, primary succession specifically, talks about those scenarios. And the first 10 years, what we see is this stuff called lichen. You've probably seen this before. It grows on rocks, it grows on sides of trees. It's it's stuff that kind of it's weird. It doesn't look like a plant. It's actually the symbiotic relationship between bacteria and algae and fungus, and they all kind of work together to make this very simple organism. And you wouldn't even start to see the formation of lichen for about 10 years. After that, the lichen starts to break down, and as it breaks down, it leaves little pockets of organic matter, and that organic matter allows for the footings of moss to start to grow. This takes about 20 years. But again, this only starts to occur as the lichen weathers and breaks down and leaves little pockets of dirt that the moss could then go into with its root system. After about 30 years, you'll start to see the first very basic plants. We're talking grasses, no trees, but grasses will start to grow where the moss has then broken down. We're now getting deeper pockets of dirt and soil deposit that allows grass to grow in the area. Only after about 60 years that you start to see woody stem plants. Anything that has a woody stem generally needs not only a good amount of soil, but also a good amount of water. Maybe it's not a fully established groundwater system, but it's going to need some water on a consistent basis. If you think about grass, it's very resilient. It rains, it'll come right back. With woody stem plants, these are going to be lasting year after year. They're going to need a good amount of soil and a good amount of water. And again, this takes about 60 years. Now, if you were to consider how long 60 years actually is in your lifetime, you could see a volcano explode, you know, uh, the day you're born. And it wouldn't be until you're past retirement age that you begin to see stuff other than grasses, moss, and lichen growing in an area. After about 100 years, so this would now be after you are gone, you're going to start to see coniferous trees. Anything that has a cone, anything that doesn't lose their leaves. These tend to be a little hardier, a little more forgiving for their environment. And then finally, you don't see those leafy kind of the trees we're familiar with, your oaks or maples, elms, anything that has a leaf that would fall off in the fall time. You wouldn't see that for 120 years. Now, if you were to paint the picture of Plainville High School, if everyone were to just walk out, well, kind of like now, if everyone walked out of Plainville High School, no one went, we shut down the parking lots, shut down the fields, no one's allowed in there. If you were to picture what would happen in that scenario, it'd be a little bit different because we're now starting with that soil. And where this takes 120 years to go and fully develop into an environment, at Plainville High School, you already have that soil, which speeds up the process a lot. Now, say after 10 years at Plainville High, the grass would start to be taller. We'd always start to see trees because the dirt is there. And that would be a case of secondary succession. The only difference between primary and secondary succession is that secondary succession starts off with soil. Hold on a second, I gotta get my dog. I'm sorry. secondary succession. The only difference here is that it's going to start off with soil. But believe it or not, that just speeds everything up quite a bit. Even in the first year, and say a wildfire came through and decimated a forest, within the first year, you're going to see that there's grasses and plants and things already starting to develop. The reason is that those seeds are already present. The system is already in place. There's already a good water system. You know, soil does a lot for water retention and keeping that water in the soil. So when you've got the soil, it almost makes everything a lot easier. And that's why plants grow in soil. It would only take 20 years to start to see a fully functioning, though small, forest. You'd get those trees that took 100 to 120 years in only 20 years' time. And again, that has to do with the fact that the seeds are already present and that the soil's already there. There are a lot of plants that are adapted to survive through forest fires. Now, if you were to think about trees in the woods, you'll notice that a lot of them don't have branches at their base. Even coniferous trees, you know, those big, tall Christmas tree looking trees, they don't have branches at their base because that's an adaptation to survive a wildfire. It allows them to not suffer too much damage to the branches if a fire were to flow through. If you think about the bark, it's thick, it's hardy. If a fire came through, it's going to rip through, it's going to burn all the leaves on the bottom, but it's going to be quick. So a lot of trees have adapted to that. Another adaptation that they have is that several trees have seeds that will crack and open in the event of a forest fire. They won't necessarily be damaged, but then they could immediately start growing. Um, so these plants have been adapted to survive these forest fires, and because of it, they can really rebound quite quickly. In just 40 years' time, so before we even saw the presence of trees in a primary succession scenario, you'll have a full forest. You'll have moss, you'll have lichen, you'll have trees, you'll have grass, you'll have shrubs, you'll have flowers. You'll have everything you could imagine in just about 40 years' time. Now, obviously, this varies climate to climate, or in what we call biomes, which are just the geographic areas of an Earth. This is going to vary quite a bit. For instance, if you had a volcano at the northern pole, you're not going to see a full forest in 40 years. You might never see a full forest. But in our temperate kind of climate, this is the speed at which you could expect things. And it only takes about a third of the time to get to that secondary or through secondary succession to recover from a forest fire completely, where that forest would now be fully functioning, right as it was before. Whereas with primary succession, it takes, like I said, about 3 times as long. And that's really all I have to say about succession. It's very important because in ecology, we want to study how things grow, how things interact, but also, the recovery of an environment is important. If we look at California, they're plagued with a lot of forest fires. This is how that environment recovers, rebounds, and ultimately grows into another fully functioning system. Anyways, I hope that helps. I'm planning on doing some more of these videos every time we cover something new. They're not going to be long. They're going to be pretty quick. Hopefully my dog doesn't have to come in during the middle. But I hope this helps. If you have any questions, please email me, and stay healthy.